Welcome to Uncle Jimmy's podcast. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Listeners, imagine a voice that can transport you from ruins of an alien-invaded Earth to the shadowed corridors of a sentient spaceship orbiting a dying planet. A storyteller whose words don't just entertain, they grip you, challenge you, and refuse to let go. Today, we're joined by a force of pure creative fire. Best-selling and award-winning author of 41 books and counting. Voiceover artist, speaker, panelist, and the visionary behind the blockbuster Dissonance Alien Invasion. Saga 1, volume of which has already been adapted for the screen, is being pitched to major streaming networks right now. His Christian dystopian epic, The End, has racked up film festival awards. His new sci-fi, reluctant hero vigilante series, Talisman, is exploding with the just-released middle chapter Nexus. In his pulse-pounding, dark fantasy, paranormal thriller, The Phoenix Experiment is already being hailed as a masterpiece of grief, friendship, in the human spirit. He's also the heartfelt voice behind a powerful nonfiction book on fatherhood that's touching souls everywhere. From battling AI's disruption of his voiceover career to doubling down on his first love, storytelling, Aaron Ryan turns every obstacle into fuel for worlds you'll never forget. Buckle in, folks. This is going to be epic. Please welcome the unstoppable Aaron Ryan.
Wow, with an intro like that, could you do all the intros and all the interviews from now on? That was great. Thank you. Humbled.
So like I said, Aaron, right, before we started recording, right, I tell people I do a deep dive. So when people come on at the end, right, they look at me and they're like, wow, you really do. Because I think it's paramount, right, with everybody having a podcast, right? Nowadays, everybody can get on and you can record, which is great. I'm all for everybody doing it. But I like to do justice, right? Bring you on and not just to plug your books, but also to have a conversation about life and why you write and why you do your voiceover work, what inspired you, right? It's powerful. Right?
And it's natural. I love the interviews that they're not scripted questions, and I'm not sent the questions beforehand, because then it's just takes all the spontaneity out of it. So fire away, man.
Yep. And I tell people that all the time, right? I've had one instance where someone asked me for the questions and I gave it to them, and that was it. And it was due to a ongoing court case that they were involved in that they could not speak about. So they wanted to make sure that it wasn't there, which I agree with. But I tell people this is not scripted. Aaron did not get the questions. Actually, we're doing this a day late because I was stuck at work. So here we are. So Aaron, you have published 41 books, right? What's the single darkest, most soul-crushing moment in your entire career that made you question if you should walk away from storytelling forever? And how did you claw your way back?
Well, problem is there isn't a single one of those moments. It's almost a daily basis. Each blessing or each book that you publish is a blessing and a curse. They are full of celebration and heartache, because you put each one out and all your hopes ride with them, all your dreams and your aspirations that this book is going to resonate with readers, is going to connect with hearts and minds out there. And for a while, you run your promotions and they climb up the bestseller chart in their respective categories, and then they slowly just drift down into obscurity again. You run more promotions and then, it goes up like this and goes down. Happens with every single book. Nothing yet has gone quote unquote viral, other than like The Phoenix Experiment was the latest one to hit a bestseller list in its category. And it's now, plummeting down the charts. You have to continue to just kind of grease the wheel, run the hustle, do the grind. But every single one is more hope than grief, more joy than pain, because it was such a great process to undertake and produce it. So you just keep going on because that joy is unmatched.
Yeah, and you got to ride the wave, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's no, if you fall off the surfboard, you get up and you keep going, right?
You do. I don't surf, so I would probably stay. I'd be the one probably floating and being eaten by a shark. But yeah, I get the analogy.
Yeah. So Dissonance, right, is your flagship alien invasion saga. And one volume is already being adapted and being pitched to major streamers. What keeps you up at night about Hollywood, right? Potentially watering down the raw terror and human frailty you poured into those pages.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, right now, it's already been adapted. It's already being pitched. And we've had, I think there's been 15 studios that it's been pitched to. No one has said no yet. So that's entirely encouraging. Skydance merged with Paramount, I believe, earlier in the year or last year. And that was a real fear factor that was impacting the industry. And they said no initially because they were shelving everything at the time, but then they settled, figured themselves out and their merger status, and then they are considering it again, which is wonderful. But with the things that are happening right now that we're seeing with Sea Dance and creating, a rooftop fight scene between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt that looks entirely believable, with a 3-minute Pixar movie that they've created in 3 hours as opposed to 3 years, with, you've got Avengers. I forget the new movie that's the subtitle, Doomsday. Avengers Doomsday coming out at the end of the year, and people are making, bootleg rip-off Sea Dance trailers for it that are not sanctioned, and they're getting the pantsuit off them for it.
Yeah.
It's crazy because, again, hopes and fears, and you just hope that they're going to do it justice. But my screenwriter stuck true to the book that I had written, and our stipulation would be that we are also on the screenwriting team so that we can ensure that it stays the straight and narrow.
Yeah. So you got almost creative control almost.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, for a large part, I should say.
Yeah. No, that's powerful, right? So take us in, right? Take us in what it's like when you're pitching something, right, to these networks. Do you go in? Does you and your team go in? What's that like?
It's completely out of my hands, which is the wonderful thing because I can just sit here and write. No, I've had 3 books adapted for the screen and 2 more are underway. The one who adapted Dissonance, though, is different from all the other ones. He's a Hollywood fellow, is what they're called. So he's entrenched in the system. He's recognized. He works with major producers. And I haven't the foggiest clue who I would approach with a screenplay and say, hey, do you like this? Would you like to read it? Consider making it into a
Yeah.
movie. He is the one who is actually out there, doing the guerrilla warfare and in the trenches, talking to contacts, making new contacts, pitching the screenplay and following up on that. And then we have regular meetings. In fact, we have one scheduled tomorrow to touch base on the status of everyone that he's pitched to. But it's all my hopes go with him every single time. There is one studio out of all these 15 or whatever it's been that I have the highest hope for, kind of an NDA situation. I can't say who it is, but we have a 4th meeting coming up with them. That's the one that I know that could do it justice the most, I believe. So it's really exciting. It's one of the most exciting things about being an indie author, and all the hopes go with that.
Yeah. So you, like you said, you got a meeting with them tomorrow, right? To touch base. So it's probably fair to say, right, Aaron, it's going to be a sleepless night tonight.
Well, it's just my screenwriter is who I'm meeting with, and I know him pretty well. He's a nice guy, not intimidating, very friendly, wonderful, sweet man. He made 2 changes in the screenplay that were very dramatic departures from the book. And I was like, can you just, and he was very collaborative, fortunately. So he control Z'd those and he made them, honor the spirit and the characters in the book. But yeah, I love talking to him. It's always a great refresher course and how's it going? And you hear new things. So yeah.
Yeah. So Aaron, what do you say to the young kids, right? The young kids coming up that are writing screenplays or writing books, what do you say? What's one message you would give them, right? To tell them to keep following their dreams, right? Because nowadays, right, everybody's told you have to go to college, right? You have to go to college. You have to get an education. You have to do that, right? Let the kids know it's okay. Maybe, take a couple of years off, write some books, do your
Right.
thing, enjoy life, right?
Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is that there's no single message. I mean, one of the biggest things I would always tell someone who is aspiring or new or, a seasoned or a veteran writer is stay true to yourself. Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I love that
Yeah.
quote because you are the youest you that you can be. No one else can be, Tom Clancy or J.K. Rowling or J.R.R. Tolkien or Grisham or King or any of those guys. You be you.
Or Aaron
The other
Ryan.
thing, yeah, well, I'll be me. I'll take care of that. But man, the hardest thing is with the foray of AI into the marketplace and the quality of offerings being watered down and diluted now because there are AI offerings infiltrating the market. Don't sell out. Don't take the easier way out and give Chat GPT or Grok or whoever it is a few prompts and allow them to write your story because that's not you. And when you hand that off to an editor, they're going to say this exact thing to you. I cannot bring out your voice if it's not there to begin with.
Yeah.
And so you won't have a signature style in your books. You won't have a style of writing that people will gravitate to. And largely they're going to detect that it's AI. So steer clear of AI and also develop structural fortitude because you're going to face a lot of rejection. You have to be able to weather that and not let anybody, it's kind of that old Matthew Wilder song, ain't nothing going to break on my stride. You have to internalize that right away.
Yeah. So be authentic, right? And stay away from
Yeah.
AI, keep your voice, right? And it's powerful because, Everyone thinks AI is great. AI is going to write me a book and I'm going to become rich and famous. And like you said, I never thought of that, Aaron, that you can't get your voice out, right? If AI is writing it for you, which is so powerful because everyone thinks AI is the way to go, whether it's emails, whether it's, pitches, whether it's books, it's not. Be yourself. And that's powerful. So
Yeah.
in dissonance, right? Humanity is pushed to its absolute breaking point. How much of that desperation came from your own real life battles with adversity, especially the AI erosion of your voiceover career?
Well, the whole dissonance saga was the first thing that I undertook when I made a return to authoring. And it wasn't born so much out of personal struggles or adversity other than the fact that it was born out of urgency. The voiceover industry, I've been a voiceover artist since 1993, full-time since 2016. It used to be very lucrative. I would wake up laughing, I'm making how much per job? There's times where now where it's, I do hit that occasionally, but they're rarer and rarer. And which is such an awkward word to say as a voiceover artist, rarer. I hate seeing that in a script, rarer. But the sad truth is that it is an industry that's eroding due to factors like AI and the SAG-AFTRA strike and the economy and the usual suspects like underbidding colleagues and lowballing clients. But I had to pivot, and I was there was a very toxic online voiceover community that I decided to just withdraw from. It wasn't doing me any good. I withdrew and I was like, Lord, I need to do something. What do I do? And that was my cue, my pivot point to return to authoring and return to fiction authoring. So Dissonance was really born out of an urgency of I've got to make something work and I've got to do something that I love because I have to create. And so it was born out of those real life circumstances. But the truth is my wife and I watched I Am Legend. We'd seen it before, and the ghost town environment of the opening scenes with lions roaming the street and, cracks growing up or weeds growing up through the cracks 6 feet tall. I thought the premise is zombies. What if the premise was an alien invasion? And thus Dissonance was born.
Yeah. You have that, right? You have the latest, I forget what the hell the name of that thing was they were calling it, that was in the middle of the atmosphere that was flying around. Everybody was saying it might have been a spaceship, right? It might have been an alien craft, right? You believe in aliens?
People ask me that because I've written an alien invasion saga. I would like to believe I believe in a God who is powerful enough to create multiple civilizations across multiple planets in multiple verses, universe, metaverse, multiverse, omniverse. I just hope that they're friendly. I hope that they're more ET as opposed to the ones that are in my story, because those aren't ETs.
Those aren't ETs, exactly. So your Christian dystopian saga, right? The end, including the latest Omicron, blends faith with apocalyptic horror. Critics sometimes call the combination risky. Did you ever worry you'd alienate secular readers, or was that tension exactly the point?
I think it was exactly the point. And in fact, Omicron is the middle chapter. The latest one is Omega, and they were published last year. It's a powerful saga, and it was when I finished writing Dissonance. The one thing that I had a problem with in Dissonance, I shouldn't say the one thing, you have a million problems with every book you write, and you slowly whittle away at them. But I was really convicted at the sporadic sparse usage of profanity in Dissonance. I'm a Christian. I don't want to, alienate readers, period. So the Gorgons are the aliens. They're barbaric enough, and they're going to eat people, and that alone could be cause to turn some people away and repel some readers. You add profanity to it, and you add questionable scenarios and stuff, and you're just going to whittle your reading pool down. So I was very convicted about the use of profanity, and I really felt God telling me, I want you to write clean fiction now, clean Christian fiction. And so that was how The End was born. And I loved that series in the 90s, the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins. Loved that series. And I wanted something like that, but altogether unlike it. And so it became a very, very redemptive saga that's loaded with heart. I'm very proud of how The End turned out.
Yeah. So two of your other adaptations, right, have already won film festival awards. What brutal lessons did you learn about letting go of creative control when your stories move from the page to screen?
That's a really good question. Well, ultimately, I do have veto power as an indie author and the person who hired the screenwriter to reflect the best wishes and tone and character of the book. So I get the final edit of the screenplay and ensure that it, stays true to the book.
That's awesome. So you're always just letting people know, right? At the end of it, it's my say or the highway, right?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, there's a reason I wrote it this way, and I want it to have these twists and turns and caveats in it. So, but it's been wonderful to see those be it's not a guarantee that you're going to get into any particular film festival. When you do, it's a hurrah moment. When it actually is a finalist, it's a hurrah moment. And when it wins awards, which The End has won several, and The Forecast has won a few, it's been so refreshing. And now I'm having The Slide and The Phoenix Experiment adapted as well, and I can't wait to see how those fare. The great thing about film festivals with screenplays is that they really increase visibility. And it's a great opportunity for you to be able to get this screenplay out and thus raise awareness of the source material, the book. And so that's a plus for me.
So when you're writing, right, this isn't a question I have, but I tell people all the time. I say 20 questions in the beginning, but then my mind starts going. So, take us into like a daily routine of you when you're writing. Are there any certain, superstitions you have? Are there any things that you have to make sure that you have, certain snacks, water, certain drinks maybe? What goes into a day of writing? And how long is that day?
Scotch. Gotta have the scotch. No, I'm kidding. It's actually Country Time lemonade, which is a staple around our household. Gotta have the lemonade. Gotta have coffee, first of all. I mean, it's kind of like Captain Jack Sparrow. Why is the rum always gone? You've got to have coffee in the morning. I have to have coffee. Superstitions, no. There are two different styles of writers. One is a planner, and the other is a pantser. And a pantser is very organic, very fly by the seat of their pants. A planner is methodical, flow charts and index cards and bullet points and blah, blah, blah. I have an overarching sense of where I want the book to go, but how I get there and how long it takes, I write it very organically that way. The art imitates life, and it should that way. So organic best represents that for me. So I just sit down and I'll start writing and see where it goes. Do I ever back myself into a corner and have to control Z my way out of it? Sometimes, but it's rare because we can't do that in life. It's kind of a forward axis perpetually, but I love to just create and see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, so you just basically, sit down, you get an idea, pen to paper, right? And you just go. You have your coffee and then you're off. You're off and running.
Yeah, although it's in kind of the reverse order from many authors. I know that. I've been told that. I'm a bit of an anomaly in this regard, and I'm okay with that. I create the book cover first. It's the very first thing that I do. It's
Oh, okay.
very backwards from a lot of authors because they'll create the story and they will then create a cover to match the intensity or the tone of the book they've written. I like to work the other way because I've always done that, whether I've made music or what have you. I like the finished product to be visible so that I can see it, I can get excited about it, and then I'll write a book that will match the intensity of that cover. That's always the way that I've done it. And so maybe there might be a superstitious element to that, is I've got to, this is my hex or not, and I have to write something that matches the tone of that cover.
No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to hear that. So you do it, you do it backwards. But again, everyone has their own way of doing things, right? And that's your way, and it works for you, and that's great. So for those that will be tuning in on YouTube, right, you're going to see it, special guest Aaron Ryan. If you click that, it's going to take you to his website. It's going to show you everything, his books, voiceover work, all that, and we'll get into that a little later, but I just like to let people know. So the Phoenix Experiment, right? Your IA dystopian dark fantasy, paranormal thriller just dropped, and it's already getting rave reviews for its raw exploration of grief. Was there a personal loss that made writing those orphan teens on a sentient spaceship feel almost too real?
No, not necessarily. I wanted to deal with something paranormal for sure. And the story didn't really coalesce into my mind until I was actually, again, pantser, until I had started into it. But I think had recently watched or rewatched rather the Poltergeist, the first one, and I love the movie. I love the paranormal aspect to it. I love the fact that there are people from the beyond that seek to commune with you and intrude upon your daily life, whether that's for good or nefarious purposes. And with the Phoenix Experiment, it does have a similar backdrop to the story as both Dissonance and The End do. A cataclysm, a post-apocalyptic scenario has wiped out a lot of Earth's population. What do we do now that we are almost bereft of hope and drifting rather than on the ground? You're still drifting there, but we're drifting out among the stars. And how long are we going to be here? What is this? What's the ultimate conclusion? Where's the payoff? And I'm fascinated by grief for sure. I'm fascinated by, the concept of resurrection. I mean, if there was technology that could bring back your bereaved loved ones, well, you're actually the bereaved one. If they could bring them back, would you engage in that? And how do you handle that? And what would the payoff be when that actually happened and your parents were back if you're an orphan? So you had to purge the emotions. They all had to purge their emotions for a very specific purpose in the book. But what happens when you put boys and girls together because they're all young and teenage, and they're taught to suppress their emotions. Well, then you put both genders together. Uh-oh, emotion explosion. And then you've got good and bad AI duking it out in that book. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, right? I can only imagine, I can picture, right, what goes on in your head sometimes. It's probably like a million and one different idea, and it's just like boom, 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 like a tennis match, right? Back and forth, back and forth. And it's so cool, right? Because it's you're taking people away from the current day. They grab the book, they read it, and they're reading these chapters and going through it and seeing the aliens. It's just powerful. It's so cool to me because it's what I think you said, what, 40. I know I said 41 in the beginning, but how many books now are you on?
This Thursday, we'll be publishing number 42 and 43.
Yeah, 42 and 43. And
Yeah.
and what day is that?
This Thursday,
Thursday, the 26th. So, hopefully I can get this up and we'll release it on the same day that the books come out. That would be pretty cool.
yeah.
So the middle chapter, right, of your Talisman Reluctant Hero Vigilante series Nexus just hit shelves. Your protagonist is a broken father and desperate husband. How much of your own journey as a dad did you bleed into that character?
Well, without spilling the beans with his name, because the Talisman series is a direct spin-off of the Dissonance series. And there are characters that permeate all of my books that basically create what you might call an Aaron verse. And I love that they're all inexorably tied together in some way, shape, or form. But the protagonist is very close to his sons, but he has been alienated from them. He desires that relationship, but he's been alienated because of this Faustian bargain that he's made with these cosmic entities to bring back his deceased wife. And it's a strange duty that he's now beholden to. And is it going to work? What's going to happen in the end? Is he going to be reconnected with his sons? I could not imagine being separated from my boys who are 10 and 6. I couldn't imagine not being in their lives and them not being in mine. So the yearning that the protagonist feels is deeply felt by me, deeply felt. So I suppose there's some of that, like blurring the lines between fiction and reality there.
Yeah. So Talisman, right, flips the superhero script by making the hero deeply flawed and reluctant. In today's world of flawless Cape Crusaders, right, why did you deliberately make your vigilante so uncomfortably human?
Because it's the human side that's attainable. One of the things I really like to inject into every book is attainability and verisimilitude. And so if they are reading something or watching something or hearing about something that they can't relate to, you've instantly got a disconnect that creates a cold environment and a cold disinterest brewing under the surface. So I do want commonalities between the people that you're reading, the characters that you're reading, and your own story. That binds you effectively to the protagonist or the antagonist in the book, and they're more relatable that way. Much more relatable.
So you've written, right, everything from post-apocalyptic thrillers to children's picture books to a nonfiction book on being a daddy. How did you switch creative gears without losing the emotional authenticity that makes every story feel like it's coming from your soul?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think I had the hardest time ever. I'm not going to say I know that I had the hardest time ever writing both Nexus and Halcyon, the finale in the Talisman series, because I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to wrap up the middle chapter and then close out the entire series. That's the danger, the inherent danger of being a pantser writer. And because I was so stuck in writer's block on book 2, Nexus, the best thing that I can do is to take an off-ramp from this highway and write something else that I've been thinking of. So, and nonfiction is a wonderful break from fiction, especially when it deals with things that are close to my heart, like being a daddy. It becomes very natural. So here I am, unable to write and unable to really push forward in this fictional book. Now I can get this therapeutic, cathartic off ramp of being able to watch my fingers flow freely about something that I do know, something I can write, something I am passionate about. And so that's kind of a break that just reinstills in me this ability and knowledge that I can do this. So I finished with that one. All right, now we can do this again. Here we go. And I know the fingers work. I know the brain works. I know the heart works. Let's do this.
Yeah. But it's still, one of the biggest things is your authenticity, right? Keeping it authentic.
Absolutely. You have to. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm asked all the time, what advice would you give aspiring writers or people who, are considering maybe becoming a writer someday? And it's just, again, be the you that you can be. Don't try to be J.R.R. Tolkien or J.K. Rowling or Isaac Asimov or Tom Clancy or John Grisham or any of them. be you. The world needs more yous. So you can pay homage, of course, to your favorite writer in whatever sense you want to in your books, but don't try to duplicate them. You're not them, and they're not you. So stand out.
Yeah. So this is another off topic not off topic, but so the other day I watched the Dune movie for the first time, right? I was so blown away, right? And to think, I don't even know how long it's been out for, but a friend of mine's son was like, "Hey, let's have a movie night. Let's watch Dune," right? And it's probably one of the best movies I've ever watched. I was so blown away. But even him telling me the story of, it's a book from the 60s that came out and they did it over, but it was so powerful. But I am going to grab the book and read it because I love to read books. I think it's one of those where the book is always better than the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, Frank Herbert knew what he's doing. I think it's Frank Herbert, right? That book is amazing. It's been a really long time since I've read Dune, and I confess I haven't read the whole thing. I did watch the movie, and I did watch most of 2. I need to finish 2 and then get to 3. But again, 10 and 6-year-olds, they dominate my time. But the book
That
is
writing.
yeah, and you're absolutely right. The book is always better than the movie. Now, that being said, there's the caveat of people who don't have time to sit and read through a book, which takes a lot longer, and it's going to feed your imagination, and things aren't visualized and conceptualized in a book form like they are in a movie. So, to each their own, but people who have seen The Lord of the Rings, huge Lord of the Rings fan, you love the movies, you're going to love the books even more. There's so much more richness to it.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie?
Oh, by a huge mile, nothing else will ever come close. Aliens, 1986 with Sigourney Weaver, James
Sigourney
Cameron, the
Weaver.
sequel to Alien.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely
That's
love it.
that's your go-to. So your Talisman series, right, features a conflicted reporter alongside the vigilante. How much of your own experience navigating the publishing and media world bled into the character's moral tightrope?
Well, I've never been a reporter, so I have nothing to say in terms of like the inner workings of the New York Post or the Washington Post, rather, or any of them for that matter. But publishing and seeking a story and creating that story in pursuit of a story, I very much relate to Onyx in that regard because she's chasing this what she calls a dark ghost who turns out to be the talisman. And there's another name about his real legendary name about him that you find out later that's revealed. But yeah, I very much relate to her. She's in pursuit of this story and she wants the answers why. She wants to understand why. And I love that about her. I don't know that I channeled any of me into her. One, she's a female, so instant disconnect, Who understands women, better than women? Who understands men better than men? So it was a little bit hard kind of gender swapping there, but I think she's a really cool, feisty, spunky character that you just are going to appreciate more and more as the series goes on.
Yeah. So fatherhood, right, is a central theme in both The Talisman and Nexus. In your nonfiction book on being a daddy, what's the one truth about raising sons that you wish every man heard before they became fathers?
One truth? Oh man, we always like to chime this joke anytime something doesn't go our way as parents. It's the quote, have a kid, they said. It'll be fun, they said. And, we always say that. But it is an adventure. It's a worthy adventure, is the first thing I would say. Responsibilities, absolutely. Are they going to drive you up the wall? Absolutely. Do all your hopes and dreams rest on them? Absolutely. But apart from that, it is the greatest single accomplishment of my entire life. My boys are my greatest achievement, and they're a tribute to life and hope and happiness with my wife. The one thing I can't wait to give them, I mean, as a storyteller, I record a journal nearly every single day. I've missed a few days here and there, but since my son, who is now 10, was 2 months old, in May of 2016, I began a journal for my boys, things about their life, what they've done, who they are, who we are as a family, where we've gone, notable achievements, teeth lost, whatever, holidays, everything, our lives together. And it's so many pages now. It's thick, double-sided in 2 columns with small print. And I can't wait to give it to them when they're 18 or 21 just to show them you were always front of mind.
Yeah.
And you are always my greatest achievement. Look how important you are. Look at all these memories. So I just can't wait to give it to them. That's my greatest story ever.
Well, that's awesome. That is so powerful to think that, every day you write something in there and that gift of being able to give it to them, right? When they turn 18 to 21, I can only imagine the look on their faces when they get that and get to read through it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
powerful.
it's powerful. It's a testament to life.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I can tell that, besides the books, the thing you love most is your sons, and that's awesome. So In the Phoenix experiment, right? Technology promises to heal grief, but risks creating monsters. Are you warning us about where we're headed with AI right now? Or is that just the natural evolution of every sci fi cautionary tale?
Probably both, a little of both. I think there's a referendum in there, even unbeknownst to me. AI is such an unmitigated, unregulated Wild West right now, and it's dangerous. And it's costing, I've seen it in voiceovers and authoring, it's costing relationships, it's costing income, it's costing livelihoods, it's costing to the environment. And I'm not a fan of AI. I'm frustrated at what AI has, the damage that it has wreaked upon the voiceover industry in my career, and I'm frustrated at the proliferation of it into the authoring marketplace as well because of the oversaturation of AI content and the degradation of quality of the offerings. So in the Phoenix experiment, there is a good AI and bad AI, and I tended to envision the bad AI very akin to um, Ash in the movie Alien, played by Ian Holm. And then you have a good sentient being, a synthetic life form, very similar to Bishop in Aliens, although it's a female android. And so they're warring at it, and it's all technology used to resurrect your deceased loved ones. But is this technology helping or harming? In the same breath, the presence of these synthetic beings and androids, is that helping or harming? Can they be trusted? Can this technology be trusted? So I'm going to walk back my earlier comments and say, yes, dang right. It's a referendum on technology. And can it heal grief, or can it create more monsters? I think the latter is more true.
Yeah. So I'm reading here, right? Experts are projecting a 30 to 50% reduction, right, in traditional voice acting jobs over the next decade. AI will handle more routine tasks, right? They're saying that it could translate to a 1.5 to $2.5 billion market shift away from human performers towards AI development, licensing, and tools. That's scary, right? I'm reading here also that some people, many freelance voice actors, especially in entry level non-union jobs, report sharp income drops. Some describe losing 75% of their voiceover income since mid 2023 due to clients switching to AI tools for quick, low cost jobs, right?
Yep, that's me. I'm in that demographic right there.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
75%. AI is just obliterating the bottom end, right? It's just literally cutting the knees off of voiceover actors, right? Nothing's
Well,
left.
yeah, and I think the enticement is obvious. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at AI and look at the incredible um, benefit of having something out there in the market much quicker than it'll take you as a human to do. Have I been tempted and heard that siren call of like, hey, why don't I just produce this one book, with AI and see how it turns out? So yes, I've received that, but I'm too, I don't know that I'm too noble for it. It clashes with everything I know. AI has eviscerated our income. It has that sharp drop you talk about. I feel a pang right here when you say that, because not only that, it's our income has dropped, but it's also cost so many great relationships of studios that I've worked with over the years and clients that I've worked with over the years who now have either then been themselves replaced by AI. So the mucky mucks at that studio said, we don't need you producers anymore. We can just, look what Dance does. You fire a few prompts off and whatever, and you're going to get what you want. Tweak it a little bit, but you have that. Or they've said, hey, look at Respeecher, Speechalo, Speech Ocean, 11 Labs. We'll go to them and they can do our voiceovers and sound almost human, or exactly, like a human. So why are we paying $3,000 for a voice actor for a national TV commercial for a whole year for one spot when we could buy a lifetime license to Speech Ocean for $49 per year? The financial draw is immense, and we can't compete with that.
No, but it also becomes like everything else, right? When it comes to the workforce, when it comes to labor and development, right? People
Yeah,
don't realize it's one of those things where AI comes in, right? It's taking away jobs, but also, right? And people get so frustrated when I talk about this. The income, right? The income doesn't go to the actors or the voiceovers now. The income goes back to the studio, right? So the studio
exactly.
is saving on that spot, right? $2,950 they're saving. That's not just one time, right? That's times thousands and thousands per year, and that's just one small job.
Correct. However, you're seeing the net result of what's happening with companies like Dance and these companies who are using artists and actors' likeness without their consent. And what they're going to pay in lawsuits and settlements, the end doesn't justify the means. Do I think AI is going to disappear overnight? No. Do I think it'll trickle down and not have such novelty? Maybe to a certain extent, But the problem right now is because it's so unregulated and because it's doing such damage to the environment, to livelihoods, to the economy, to relationships, blah, 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 to careers. I just reminded of two quotes, and they're both by Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm in Jurassic Park. The first one is, yeah, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should. Right? There's that one. We're seeing that one now. And the other one is him in The Lost World, Jurassic Park, where he says, yeah, oh yeah, ooh, that's how it always starts. But later there's running and screaming. We're not headed in the direction of Skynet. I'm not convinced of that, but we are headed in a direction, if this continues to go unregulated, of massive pileups of costs, both socioeconomical, both reputational, both societal. We're seeing the dumbing down of society right now because of AI. And here's the greatest example. I see these reels on TikTok of an aerial view of a coastal town. I've shared this before, but it's an aerial view of a coastal town. There's people walking along over, you see them down with their little Gucci bags, la 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 la, just walking along, completely oblivious to the fact to something they could just turn to the left and see this massive tsunami bearing down on this coastal town, and it completely overwhelms it, it inundates it and destroys that town. And it's fake, it's AI. And yet, if you scroll through the comments, you see people who have watched that video and they're going, oh, those poor people, they
Yeah.
just never saw it coming. And it's like, with that kind of dumbing down of society, what hope have we?
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me is people don't realize AI, right? There's so many videos. You go on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media networks, right? And it's climbing up there, whether it's 60% of the videos are all AI, I can see it from a mile away. And I'm like, oh, some of my friends will send me some reels and they'll be like, oh, did you see this? And I'm like, you can't tell that's AI. Like, not really, like they showed, I'm not going to get into politics, but you saw the videos the other day of, last week of Benjamin Netanyahu. He has 6 fingers, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. It's all AI produced and,
Melted faces. There are telltale signs. There always are.
yeah.
There are telltale signs of AI usage in the authoring industry. Dashes is one classic example. It's the long dash with no space either before or after it. Bullet lists frequently used. There's so many other signs that just kind of scream this is used by AI. There's no personalization or first person voice in it. It's like almost entirely clinical.
Yeah.
And those are trademarks of AI that dehumanize it, and yet us humans are just going, "Oh, yeah, ooh, that's how it always starts," but later there's running and screaming.
Exactly. So looking at your entire catalog from Dissonance to the End, the Phoenix Experiment, what's the one overarching message you're trying to scream into a world that feels increasingly dystopian?
Hope. I mean, that was phrased so well, and so the single answer is hope.
Hope. Yeah.
There is hope. It's the one thing that is stronger than fear. And I love that quote. It's by President Snow in the Hunger Games. Hope. It's the one thing stronger than fear. When everything is stripped away, I love these environments of dystopia where you have everything that you want to happen is just out of reach. The justice that you're longing for and yearning for is unattainable. You've got the wicked people in power and, their thumb is down on you and you are they're the taskmasters and you're the slaves. Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And is it a train, coming
Yeah.
bearing down on you? But you strip everything away in an alien invasion that kills off 85% of society, mankind, and organic life. You're eking out an existence in the shadows, but you still have hope. It cannot be extinguished. It's that flickering candle in the midst of a raging in tempest and black void. I like to impart just there's always hope. There's always something that you can cling to in the end.
And it's funny, right? I have tons of tattoos, and I don't have many words, but one of the words I do have on me tattooed is hope.
Yeah, good.
It's
Awesome.
one of my big things too of keeping hope, right? Every day you wake up, there's hope for a better day, hope for a better, better night, hope for everything to be better. And one of my biggest things was, I just love hope. And when President Obama was running for president, his big thing was hope, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Powerful. And,
Yeah.
it's actually funny, I'm going to say this and it's probably never going to happen, but I did shoot an email to the former president wanting him to come on the show and not talk politics, right? But talk about his life from growing up in the South Side of Chicago to where he is today. And hopefully someday he'll come on and join Uncle Jimmy and sit down and have a great podcast,
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be very cool.
I actually had the pleasure of meeting him twice before he became president. I tell people this story all the time, so my listeners, you're going to hear it again because they always hear it. I've never met someone in my life like President Obama, who I was in a hall both times I met him with 1,000 people per se or 500 people, and he makes you feel. He went around, shook every hand, had a brief conversation, 30 seconds to a minute with every person in that room, and he makes you feel like it's just you and him in this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Right? It's just powerful. He's such a powerful guy, and one of my favorite presidents of all time. So Forecast,
Awesome.
right? Your historical fiction thriller just got selected for another film festival. How does it feel when a story you wrote years ago suddenly finds new life on the big screen while you're battling fresh challenges in your career?
I can only hope it makes it to the big screen. That's every indie author's dream. Forecast was one of the hardest novels I wrote. In fact, it was probably the hardest until I came to Talisman Nexus and Halcyon. Forecast, I'm still deeply moved to this day by the heroism and bravery of the heroes and victims of 9/11. The 343 firefighters, the passengers aboard United 93 and 175 and 77 and 11, and all of the Port Authority workers and the policemen, the NYPD. I'll never forget it, and you should never forget it. It's impossible to do. You cannot turn back time, but I wanted something that would provide an escapist catharsis rather from the events of 9/11. I wanted to undo it. I wanted to just basically undo it and save all those lives. So in a fictional setting, it turned out to be one of the best things I've ever written. It is loaded with Easter eggs. It's not time travel. There's a man who lives across the Hudson from Manhattan in Jersey City, and so he is in and out of Manhattan all the time. He's a weatherman. He's struck by lightning, imbued with powers he doesn't know what to do with, and he's able to see the future, and he's able to use this lightning that's trapped in his body. It never left his body, and he's able to completely avert. I had to do a lot of research. I swear if the FBI ever looks at my search history from that point in time when I was writing, I'm going to look like a terrorist, because I had to look up all these things, and I had to pull up also all of this pop culture from September 2001, and what phones were popular, and was Starbucks even around then, and like you had to just kind of really do a heavy amount of research for that. But that book has turned out into one of the greatest things I've ever written. I'm not surprised that as the screenplay, it's been entered into film festivals, accepted in, and it just won the Atlanta After Dark Film Festival's award for um, best dark science fiction screenplay.
Okay.
I would love, it's still an uncomfortable, polarizing topic, 9/11, but if we can just get past ourselves and celebrate the heroism of it, that's what the book and the screenplay are all about.
No doubt about it. That day, I'll never forget. I was in high school at the time, and it was just, one of those days. And I live in Boston, and I say this to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy. I remember 9/11 that night, and I live in Boston over the flight path, right? And there's no planes at all in the sky, and everything's shut down, and there's not supposed to be any planes. And when I tell you, we were sitting. It's me and two of my friends and three of my friends right at the park right across the street from my house. And we saw this private jet go up from Logan Airport. It's probably 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. We had no clue what it was, no clue where it was going, but we do know there was a plane that went up, right? Middle of the night. Nothing was flying. So when I tell you where I live, you can hear it. When I'm in my bed, it looks out back, and if the flight path is directly over the house, I can see the lights going into the airport. I can see the lights from the plane, because we're right here from Logan, right near Logan, and I can see them coming in. And you can say, oh, I'm over the flight path, right? But that night was one of the craziest nights ever because there was a private plane that left. And I'm not going to get into who was on the plane because you can look it up, but there was some people on that plane that you would be shocked to know who was on that plane getting out of Boston that night. It was scary though, because here we are in a state of emergency, everything that went on, and there's a plane coming out of Logan, and it was crazy. It was one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
I bet.
So your characters, right, often face impossible choices between survival and morality. In your own life, what's the hottest one away or one to stay decision you've ever made as an author and father?
My gosh. Well, the easiest answer for that is to date my future wife. There was a point in time where I really felt unworthy of love and unworthy of a relationship, unqualified. I was very addicted to business and starting my business, and she was the cure for that. I didn't recognize it at the time. I didn't see it for what it was, and I was very allegiant and fiercely protective of my work and business because I was just starting to build a multimedia company. I felt like she was smothering me. The slightest little like, "What time is it?" question. It was, "Why are you smothering me?"
Yeah.
And I didn't feel worthy of that. But I'm so glad that God kicked me in the butt and woke me up in the middle of the night, and I saw 30 years of my life with her flash before my eyes, and I had to do an about face and go, listen, I know that I told you all this and that, whatever, but can we talk? Can we get together and talk? And she's like, okay, is this a impulsive thing or is it more of a knowing thing? And I wrote back knowing, and we got together, and I wouldn't say the rest is history because there's been a lot in between. It was a dark and stormy night and the end, and we're not at the end yet. But I'm so grateful for her, and she's just rocked my world and changed my life and brought me the two greatest achievements of my life, my two little boys.
That's awesome. And she was able to draw you away from the work, right? Able to draw you away and not keep you in there, fully
Yeah.
focused on your work. And that's great, right? Because oftentimes, we lose sight, right? We lose focus on what's in front of us. And sometimes we lose people, lose things because of we're so focused on our careers, right?
Yeah, we lose focus of what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's your wife and your two kids, and then the books, right? Then the books come next. Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. So with two more questions right before we end. And hold on, before I get to the next question. So where can I get a copy of Forecast? Where can I get a copy of that?
Yeah. So all of my books are available through authoraaronryan.com. You can go
Okay.
there. Authoraaronryan.com has the menu bar on the top, and you can look for the one. I think it says store. It might say shop, but it probably says store. And that'll take you to a few different choices. So you can buy them on Amazon, or you can buy them direct from me, which I totally prefer because I can sign them for you. And then you get a pen and a bookmark that come directly from me with a message. I don't just go like Aaron Ryan. I don't like that. I like to write a heartfelt message and thank you for supporting me. So authoraaronryan.com. And then you can also find out a lot more information about the books and the pursuits by going to authoraaronryangroup.com. It's a private and exclusive Facebook group where I just have a lot of engagement with readers there.
Perfect, right? And as I tell people, that's the link right there. That's going to bring you to Author Aaron Ryan, the store, to his page where you can go to the store and all that and get your good books. Because I'm excited. I'm going to go on and order. I'm going to order my book right after we finish here. Right before I get into my 6 o'clock, I'm going to order it so I know it's coming and I'm good to go.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'll be showing people. Right? I was lucky enough, people are sending the books. I'm reading them, send them my way if you got them. So with Talismans, right? Complete saga dropping soon and more books already in the works. Where do you see your storytelling evolving in the next 5 years? Bigger spectacles, deeper personal pain, or both?
Probably both. I mean, I think an artist's job is always to push themselves and stretch themselves. Man, did I stretch myself with the Talisman series. Not so much with Volume 1 Subterfuge, but Nexus, yeah, and Halcyon, I mean, takes place in the multiverse, for crying out loud. It is like, oh my, if you asked me if I had any notion in the very beginning of writing Subterfuge that 2 novels later, this same story arc would culminate in the multiverse, I'd ask, what are you smoking and can I have some? I mean, because it was like, holy cow, I'm in the multiverse. Just that's what a pantser does. They just arrive at places they never intended to.
Yeah. So last question, right? If a young writer came to you tomorrow saying, I want what you have, 41 books, adaptation awards, but I'm terrified of failing, what single piece of brutally honest advice would you give them that most gurus are too afraid to say?
Fail repeatedly. Fail your way towards success. That is the only way to succeed. And I love the quote. I think it's by Jim Rohn. I could be mistaken, but success is not an event. It is not a destination. It is a journey. So you don't instantly arrive at success. You fail your way towards it. And that is where you learn the very best lessons you possibly can about what to do and what not to do, about how to go about it. Treat your authoring pursuit as a business, not a hobby. That is where you're going to make more money. That's where you're going to reach more people. That's where you're going to treat it more officially. So the biggest thing is just, again, don't be afraid to fail. I completely understand about failing. And I'm going to be transparent when I say that every book that I put out there, I want it to succeed beyond measure. I want it to go viral. I want people to just absolutely fall in love with it. That's never happened to date. When it does, I'll be, screaming giddy like an 11-year-old girl when it happens. It hasn't happened yet, but I continue to push and continue to learn and continue to grow as a writer. And you just have to be willing to fail with each book.
Yeah. And I think that's coming. I think your success and, 41 books and going and counting, it's going to come. The break's coming. I can feel it. I feel
it. Yeah.
So Aaron, from the first page of Dissonance, right, that gripped our hearts in an alien apocalypse, through the faith-fueled fire of the end, the raw fatherly ache of Talisman Nexus, the haunting grief of the Phoenix experiment, and every courageous word you've poured into 41 books while staring down AI head on, you haven't just told stories. You have reminded every listener today that real heroes aren't born in capes or on screens. They're forged in the quiet moments when life tries to silence your voice and you choose to sing louder anyway. You have
Yeah.
shown us that adversity isn't the end of the story. It's the plot twist that makes the ending unforgettable. Thank you for opening your world to us, for sharing your battles and your breakthroughs, and for proving that the greatest superpower any of us possess is the courage to keep telling our stories. Listeners, if Aaron's words lit even a single spark in you today, run. Don't walk to author.aaronryan.com. Grab his books and let them change the way they've changed so many of us. Aaron Ryan, you are a gift to storytellers everywhere. Thank you, brother. We can't wait to see what you create next.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I need the Kleenex now. Excuse me. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, brother. And like I like to tell everybody, peace and love, Uncle Jimmy out.